Hey, what's happening, fellas and ladies? Ryan and Matt here. This is the DFS 5-pack. We are here on Tuesday, the 26th of January, ready to talk about a little NBA DFS for the evening. Got ourselves a 3-game slate tonight, so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter one. But as I promised yesterday, if y'all pound that like button, just slide your fingers over it, hit it, press the thumbs up. We can do a members-only video free to the public tomorrow. We got ourselves a bigger Wednesday slate, so we'll dissect every game, kind of get into our thoughts and processes on it. And hopefully that would be advantageous for everybody. So press the like button and we'll do our part.
Yeah, let's get it, man. Excited to talk about this one and an even bigger one tomorrow for sure.
Yes, sir. So there's still a lot up in the air on this one. So we told our customers, like, we might do a second members only video today because we're still waiting on some pretty big information from the Atlanta Hawks. That'll have a lot to do with this one. Also, wouldn't be flabbergasted if out of nowhere the Clippers lost another player or two.
No doubt about it.
All right, guys. So get your money in over at Drafters as well. I got a link to our Drafters Facebook group down there below. We're going to be doing a lot more drafts on there. And as far as the 5-pack promotions of the day, we already mentioned it. We're trying to get 350 combined likes between yesterday and today's video. All you got to do is slide your finger over to the thumbs up button. And everybody that purchases a day pass today for today's premium information, you'll get tomorrow for free. We call it 2 for Tuesday. Website link is below. Subscribe to the station if you're new to it, and we'll roll through our normal format for today. So, cash game lock of the day, DeMarcus Boogie Cousins of the Houston Rockets, priced up at $6,000. I drafted this guy in every year-long league this year. Almost cut him 5 times. Glad I didn't because he is starting to look real good. We'll see what happens when Christian Wood comes back. But all things line up for Wood being out for a third straight game. He's listed as doubtful tonight. We will take the Rockets at their word. If we hear otherwise, do your thing. But as it stands right now, it seems very unlikely, which means Boogie should enter right back into the starting lineup. I think there's 2 key things that you're going to want to take a look at. One, he played 30-plus minutes in back-to-back games. That's without question the most important part of this is the minutes were there. This guy had been getting really, really eased in after, losing multiple seasons with bad injuries. Looked like they just weren't ready to run him big. Well, the gloves are off. He played big minutes. And the second thing that's super important that I liked, and I watched a good portion of this game, he looked like the old Boogie the second time around. He got there in game 1 with the rebounds and a couple other things, but he shot the ball terribly. He was on fire Saturday night against the Mavs, looked awesome. He looked like Boogie that we used to play 10K for back in the day. The Washington centers are Robin Lopez and Alex Len are not, matchups that we're scared of in the slightest. The only thing that we could really come up with and why we can make the case for fading in GPPs is one, in the modern NBA, things can get blowoty. Maybe he doesn't play big minutes in the second half. But more importantly than that, we thought was he's a guy that he could be a hack. He could pick up 2 quick fouls in the first 2 minutes of the first quarter, and they could roll with some of the other players. They're more full strength in Houston today. If you wanted to make a case for the GPP fade, we got it. But for my money, he'll 100% be in my cash lineup and probably make all of, if not all, most of my GPPs.
Yeah, I think the cases to fade him are one. I mean, he's going to be 90% owned. We saw a guy in Dwight Howard similarly last night. Just didn't start the second half. Ended up being very, very mad. Expect much more from Cousins here. But DK also priced him up. He's no longer 4,400. And as you mentioned, Houston has their full team back. So it's not crazy to think that, he has 30 to 36 DK points, which is what he had against Detroit. And he's a fine play, but not an absolute must. The flip side of that, however, is there's also a big likelihood that he gets that 40 to 50 that he put up last time out. He was dominant. He showed us, the Boogie of old in a good spot here against Washington. Even though he's priced up, he's still too cheap. And if you're making an optimal line, he's definitely in it. Fade at your own risk if you are fading him.
Definitely a fade at your own risk. So both of our long shots today are going to be centers. So I do think that there could be some merit for the ballsier players out there. The guys who want to fade chalk. I mean, I know that's how you like to play, so I'm sure there's other people out there with a similar thought process along this one. I can see why he wouldn't be great off of 6K. I think it's plausible. But as you said, fade at your own risk, because if he plays anything remotely close to like he did on Saturday, I mean, he's going to just meander into at least 35 points.
No doubt about it.
All right, next up. So let's talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, and you want to talk about Lou Williams. We did a lot of speaking about him in the members-only video because it's a very interesting play tonight. The Clippers, as you guys all know, no Patrick Beverley, no Kawhi Leonard, no Paul George. So not only are they losing a lot of minutes and points, this could also be a more offensive-oriented game than maybe you think of with the Clippers.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, we usually think about the Clippers Kawhi, one of the top defensive teams in the league. Well, now they're missing probably their top 3 defensive players. So a lot to like about Lou Williams here, who hasn't been very good this season. And you mentioned it, on our members only video. This is one we definitely care about if he's starting or not. There's a lot of scenarios here, and you mentioned it. We haven't seen this situation play out yet with all these 3 guys out. So it's likely in my eyes that Lou Williams is starting, plays bigger minutes than he's seen all year, has a higher usage than he's had all year, takes more shots than he's had all year. There's also a possibility that he continues to come off the bench, doesn't play many more minutes, and just has the same, boring role he's had all year. I lean to the former, but the latter is also definitely in play, so that's why he's more of a tournament play. At 5,800, I expect him to get love but not be overwhelming chalk. This game sets up for a lot of upside depending on, who's in and out for Atlanta. We might have some more Clippers news. I like him quite a bit, and I think the upside's real here at 5,800, albeit with some risk.
There's definite risk. And I'll tell you from a cash game perspective, if he's starting, I'm probably going to play him. If he's not, I'm worried. If it's Reggie Jackson, Kennard, Batum, Morris, and Ibaka, I am concerned that he's not going to play those bigger minutes. You said something on the members only video, like maybe they're just over him in LA. And maybe they are thinking like Reggie Jackson is going to be like their spark plug off the bench. I don't agree, but it's not my decision. I have zero say about what happens over there. So it is one of those rare spots where I do really care about whether or not he's starting in this game, because to pay $6K for Lou Williams, I need to know he's going to play at least 25 minutes. And I don't know that necessarily if he's coming off the bench. That will hurt his ownership, though. If he's coming off the bench, I think I am not going to be alone in that thought process. It will definitely make him significantly lower owned, in my opinion.
Amen to all that.
So, and it's the first game, so you're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next up, lock for the day between the two of us, going to be Bradley, the real deal Beal, especially before we know about Trae Young and Clint Capella. The other high-priced guys on this slate are just, not in great spots. Russell Westbrook was on a minutes restriction in the first game. Wouldn't be surprised if that continues. Beal just shoots the ball so much. Really look through his game log. There was only one game in the past 10 where he shot less than 20 times. He's super aggressive from the offensive side of things. This is another one, and I think a really important point for me on Bradley Beal today. I don't need him to crush value. Like, I don't need him to go for 65 to think he's a good play. Like, if he goes for 50, I'm happy. I'm even happy with that in GPPs. On a normal slate like last night, you're not looking for 50 on 9,900 in GPPs. But in tonight, because of all the pay down options across the board, I think you can be satisfied with that in a tournament type of play.
Yeah, 50 for sure. No doubt about it. I think that if he has 50, projections say it all. He's the only guy that's projected for over 50 DK points on this entire slate. There is no one over 10K. So based on all that, he just makes a lot of sense. Again, he takes a ton of shots. There's only one game in his past 10 that he has under 20 shot attempts. He averages like somewhere between 25 and 30 a game. Can't ask for much more from anyone in a good spot, not the best spot in the world against Houston, but still a fine spot in a game I expect to be competitive. Washington got the rust off a little bit. They played that first game they hadn't played in a while. I like them a lot more in this spot. A ton to like about Beal here.
Yeah, he was not good to start the game last time out. It was a bit rusty. Hadn't played in a little bit. He'd just been off for a while. It took him a little bit to get going. We're seeing that in just regular NBA games this year, even for guys who haven't been off for a couple of weeks due to, COVID restrictions and stuff like that. Like if you watched, I can't even think of them off the top of my head. I watched 2 games pretty hard last night where it was just ugly. The Nets-Miami game, for example, was just hideous in the first quarter. Nobody could hit a shot. Things got a little bit better as the game progressed. And it's kind of a theme within the NBA this year because they're not able to do a lot of shoot-arounds. There's not a lot of practice. Beal knocked the rust off last game. I expect him to play better from the jump because you just saw the progression in the second half.
No doubt about it.
All right, next up, so let's move over to the long shots for the day. And they're both centers, but they're completely different types of builds. So I thought it would be an acceptable way to talk about the center position today. One, we already brought him up. DeMarcus Cousins is going to eat almost all of the ownership at the center position. Now, we still do have the utility. It's pretty good practice to try to double up on centers most days if you're able to anyway. So I want to talk about Serge Ibaka from the Los Angeles Clippers. And I'm going to say something. You tell me if you agree or disagree. If he had power forward eligibility, don't you think he would be like significantly higher owned today?
I think he'd be like popular. So yes.
So, but because he's only center eligible, I don't think he gets a ton of love. Again, he won't be 1%, but instead of like, if he was forward eligible as well, I think you'd probably see him at over 50% today at this price tag. But because he's not, I think he comes in more like, I don't know, 10 to 15 maybe.
I agree with that. Maybe I think he might be slightly less forward eligible. I was going to say 40 to 45%, but we're in the same ballpark.
Like we saw a bunch of guys on the Clippers get a massive increase to their price, like big time. Ibaka went up a little bit, but not substantially. And yes, I don't guarantee him to play mid-30s for minutes just because they're losing those other guys. But if this game's competitive, I think there's an argument to be made. He is right now, with who's active tonight, the best player on the Clippers.
I agree with that. You could definitely make that argument. I wouldn't argue with you if you wanted to say that at all. They're going to need him tonight. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on Lou Williams' play this year, it's hard to make the case for him that I would have made last year.
For sure. I feel like as far as like him, Lou Williams, and Morris are all like very similar NBA players. As far as their careers go, I feel like the list would be Lou Williams, then Ibaka, then Morris. But right now, Ibaka might be the best. But it's all very close. So I'm with you. I like this call. His ownership's going to be minimal strictly because of Cousins. And again, Cousins is a really good play, but there are definitely scenarios in which Ibaka outscores him. And if that happens, you're setting yourself up for, a potential good night, assuming you get all your other picks right. Don't just think that you can make this play and win all the money. But man, I'm with you. Like, it's very intriguing because what happens if Cousins gets into foul trouble and, the game blows out a little bit and he only has like 30 DK points. Whereas Ibaka, this game stays tight. He's got like a big upside game and has like 45. I mean, that's huge leverage. So I get it for sure.
I mean, we saw Ibaka, you guys remember in the playoffs when he was playing really, really well for Toronto. I mean, this guy had a couple of games where he hit like 40, 45 DFS points in like 20, 22, 23, 24-ish minutes. He's still very, very capable. Under this current team with all those dudes in there, he just doesn't need to take a ton of shots because, well, Kawhi Leonard's a better offensive player than Serge Ibaka. Paul George in the regular season is, he's just a much more aggressive, much better DFS offensive player than Serge Ibaka. So he plays some defense, takes a couple of threes, takes a couple of those mid-ranges up by the key. But tonight, you could see Ibaka shoot 15, 16, 17 times. Maybe he gets a couple extra rebounds. Maybe he plays more minutes because they need him tonight. So I like the intrigue right here. Again, Cousins is the crush play on paper, but a point against Cousins tonight. They have both John Wall and Victor Oladipo tonight. What if the outside shots are falling and they just don't need as much from Boogie?
For sure. And it's interesting, like Cousins we've talked about, it's going to be very, very popular. And then I think Gobert is going to get a decent amount of love at 7,200. Is smack dab in the middle.
Yep. So I don't know. I think he's not low. He's not a long shot to play and be efficient. He's a long shot in terms of what his ownership will be because of the position flexibility today. So then we'll move over to your long shot, which is Alex Len of the Washington Wizards, which is a completely different build than using a Serge Ibaka. So they're two completely different things. You brought it up over and over again on the members only video. They play again tomorrow too. Houston's the better team right now. If they roll up on Washington, I mean, Alex Len could play, 16, 17 minutes in the second half.
Yeah, I definitely could see, it's a completely different build, but I could see playing both of them together. I don't think like that's crazy at all. Just, as we've talked about, tell yourself the story. If the Clippers-Hawks game is really close, I like Ibaka even more. Meanwhile, if this game gets out of hand, I like Len even more. So if that's how you're playing, I think these guys actually match up well. The thing with Len, he played 20 minutes last time out. You don't really need him on this slate because there aren't, a ton of spend-up options. However, you mentioned it with the Clippers. All those guys are priced out. And as a center who walks into DFS point, if you think that, this Washington team who, again, struggled in the second half against San Antonio, hadn't played in a couple weeks, if you think they struggle here, I think they're going to give Len a ton of run, especially because they play tomorrow. And he's got big upside at 3,300. This is a true long shot. I don't think he gets much love. There's no guarantee he plays. But on 3-game slates at 3,300, I could see taking a shot on him for sure.
Especially if Trae Young plays and you want to spend up on like Young and Beal, and now all of a sudden you don't have the Rondo paydown option.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
So there is that in play. The other guy that, I meant to mention under, Serge Ibaka was Clint Capella. If Capella plays tonight, I mean, that will just eat into Serge Ibaka's ownership, even more. It's also not as good for Ibaka because, Capella is a nice center that can make life a little bit more difficult on him. But there's a million different ways that this slate might change throughout the day. And obviously the big thing is waiting on those two big guys from Atlanta right now.
Agreed.
So, all right, guys. Memberships available through the website. 2 for Tuesday. Buy a day pass, get tomorrow for free. Pound that like button so we can do members only free to the public tomorrow. Best of luck tonight, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.